This week on Dance of Joy, we wonder what's in Larry Appleton's diary, how to master the perfect meat toss, and why we don't see more flash mob divorce videos. All that and more as we watch Season 2, Episode 13 of our favorite 80s hit sitcom, Perfect Strangers. Hello and welcome to Dance of Joy, a Perfect Strangers rewatch podcast. My name is Imran. Joining me, as always, my sister, Sophia. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm happy to be here. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm ready to enjoy some annoying roommate material. You ever had an annoying roommate?
Oh, haven't we all? And what an appropriate question to ask, because today we are watching Season 2, Episode 13 of Perfect Strangers that is called Since I Lost My Baby.
The title may be a reference to, there's a similar line in the Elvis Presley song from 1956 called Heartbreak Hotel, which, you know, Heartbreak Hotel. Everybody knows Heartbreak Hotel. It starts out with, since my baby left me.
Since my baby left me.
I found a new place. So, since I lost my baby, close,
Maybe.
but the theme of Heartbreak Hotel definitely ties into this episode, because if you would open the TV guide, back when there was a TV guide, you would have read but the description, the guys need to put the romance back into Twinkie's marriage and get him out of their apartment. Very important.
Oh no, Twinkie's marriage is at stake. It's on the rocks.
We've had hints of this whole time.
Yes.
Didn't seem like he had a good home life there.
This episode, of course, like every other, stars Bronson Pinchot and Mark Lynn Baker, and it aired on January 14th, 1987.
Act 1 opens at lovely Ritz discount with everything you need to buy right there for you. And it opens with a Balky song alert. Balky and Larry come in to open the store in the morning, and Balky is singing the theme to Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
Who doesn't love the theme to Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood?
Again, something everybody knows. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. And he goes on to sing, and he comes around to Larry, and he asks him, like Fred Rogers would ask the viewers often, can you say good morning? Balky asks in a very Mr. Rogers-like voice. And Larry just looks at him and goes, no.
Larry is cranky. Has he not had his coffee this morning?
He must not have had. He hasn't paid Twinkie $10 for that cup of coffee in styrofoam.
Mr. Rogers, of course, was a very, very popular children's show, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, that aired from 1968 to 2001.
Isn't that crazy?
That is amazing.
I mean, we don't have to explain who everyone knows Mr. Rogers,
right.
Or, you know, Tom Hanks as Mr. Rogers.
Right.
You're very young. I don't know.
So Balky and Larry are in the shop. They're, opening up, setting up, and then they hear a sound coming from the office in the back, and they see like a shadow behind the door, and they pause, they freeze, and Larry's like, someone's in the office. And he grabs a baseball bat from this like bin in the front where the canes are. And then he creep walks slowly and quietly across the store, and Balky mimics his walk just behind him. And then we have this beautiful bit of silent physical comedy.
Yeah, no dialogue. This is great.
No dialogue because they're trying to be quiet because they think there's a prowler in the office. So as they're creeping across the store, they pass another table, and all the things on the tables have sheets over it. And so Larry just looks at Balky, and he signals to the sheet to Balky to take the sheet. And Balky's like, I got it. He gives him this look. He's like, okay. And he pulls the sheet off, but then he throws the sheet on the floor, and on the table is a row of teddy bears. And then Balky grabs a teddy bear and holds it like a weapon, just like Larry is holding up the baseball bat. And Larry's like, oh my goodness. And he puts the bear back on the table, and he picks up the sheet and gives the sheet to Balky. And Balky gives him this look like, what do I do with this?
What do I do with this, cousin?
And Larry goes through this motion of what he's supposed to do, which is, of course, throw it over the burglar so that Larry can hit him on the head. I don't know why he can't just hit him on the head without the sheet.
You don't want to look in the face of the guy you're about to bash in.
That's true.
It's very hard.
So Balky's like, oh, okay, I get it. And he does a practice throw over Larry's head. And then he bops him on the head with his hand, and then he pulls off the sheet, and Larry's just like, his hair's all messed up, and he's got that like angry Larry.
He got that bad
panicky
face.
look.
It's so funny.
So they finish making their way to the other side of the store where the back room is, and Larry stands on a chair on one side of the door, and Balky is with the sheet on the other side of the door, and then the door opens.
Oh, who is it?
And it's Twink Cassetti in pajamas, and he's yawning, and he walks out. Balky throws the sheet over him, and Larry's about to bash him in, but Balky holds up his hand to stop him. He goes, It's Mr. Twink Cassetti.
Oh, God.
And then Twink Cassetti just barks.
I love his bark. He just goes, it's so great. Twinkie barks are the best.
And they uncover him, and Larry's like, we thought you were a prowler. So Twink Cassetti's there in his pajamas, and it turns out that he has slept in the office.
Oh, boy.
And why did he sleep in the office?
His wife threw him out because he forgot their wedding anniversary. And Balky goes, you should be ashamed. And Twink just goes, and you should be neutered. Barks snaps right back at him. And then we find out that Twink Cassetti has actually forgotten all 16 of his wedding anniversaries.
Yes.
There. And then Balky
his wife has had enough.
Balky's trying to console him. He goes, well, nobody's perfect. Suddenly, Edwina Twink Cassetti, the hilarious Belita Moreno, rushes in with a suitcase and looking angry. And Donald Twink Cassetti is like, Edwina, my love. And she goes, drop dead, Donald.
Oh, this is bad.
She goes, hi, boys. And then Balky just blurts out, happy anniversary, which is a little bit awkward line. A little bit awkward line to say there.
I'm going to stop you right there. That line, I just watched it again.
Yeah.
The facial expressions on every single person in the scene simultaneously was brilliant.
They tell you
Balky
everything.
Goes, in like one split second, everybody reacted in a different way, and it was very telling. Balky goes, happy anniversary. Edwina reacts with like another punch to the gut. Like,
Twink's like,
Twink said he's like,
quiet. And then Larry's just like, boy.
Larry's just like rolling his eyes.
But you can see it all on their face. Yeah.
Yeah.
But so Edwina goes, thank you, Balky. You're one up on him, which she's right. She's brought his things over, and she is fed up with him. And she goes, Donald, you have taken me for granted once too often. It's over. And then she pauses, and she goes, I want a divorce. And Mr. Twinkie said, he goes, the divorce just for forgetting one wedding anniversary 16 times. And I'm like, did she just ask for a divorce in front of Balky and Larry? She's
oh my God,
personal
how
business.
Awkward.
They're standing right there.
That's a very personal thing, and she didn't care. That's how fed up she was. So awkward, though. Impressive. If I ever divorce someone, I'm going to do it in
public. That way you have witnesses. Anyway,
you know how there's videos for proposals for the world to see?
There should be divorce proposals.
There should be divorce videos.
There should be a flash mob sung to the theme of a song from The Greatest Showman, and it's actually a divorce
do it in front
procedural.
Of people.
You're serving divorce paper. That's so mean. Anyways, Evita goes on, goes, look, it's not the anniversaries, Donald. It's not the gambling and the wild nights out with the boys. And then she stops and thinks, because actually it is that. But it's more than that. The romance is gone. The magic is gone. You're gone. Goodbye, Donald. And then one final stab. She picks up the suitcase. She goes, oh, by the way, she unlatches it, dumps all his stuff out. She goes, I'm keeping the luggage, and turns and walks out.
Luggage is expensive. If you're a couple and you've invested in good luggage, she should keep it.
The Samsonite's supposed to last you for a lifetime.
Right.
A gorilla jumped on it.
Longer than your marriage.
Yes, absolutely. So Twink is surprised now that she actually used the D word. He said they've had fights in the past. Balky suddenly is very empathic and feels Twink's pain. But Twink said he goes, I'm too numb to feel any pain. And he heads to his office to be alone and to think of a reason to live.
And Balky, ever the empath, dear, sweet, loving Balky, follows him, and he stops and he says, no, Mr. Twink Cassetti, you shouldn't be alone. And he tells Cousin Larry, he's like, Twink Cassetti needs to be with friends. And Larry agrees. He says, that's a good idea. Yes. And then he tells Twink Cassetti, go see some friends.
Go see some friends.
And Twink Cassetti, this is perhaps the saddest line in the whole show.
This is so funny.
Twink Cassetti says, I can't do that. All my friends know me.
Oh, poor Twink is alone.
This isn't looking good. Well, Balky, of course, is very sweet and very loving. And he says, we know you and we're still your friends. And Larry says, we are? Belky says, and you can stay with us.
Oh,
And
no.
Larry says, he can?
Oh, boy.
That was a very funny, quick exchange in a pattern, right?
Yeah.
He can.
They do this again, too, kind of later in the episode.
And so Larry pulls Balky aside and he's like, are you crazy?
Yeah, he says crazy.
And Balky's like, no, he's in pain. And Larry says, well, you're just bringing his pain to us. Like, how is making our life difficult going to change that? Balky, again, is so sweet. He says somebody has to let him know that he's not alone. He's not a totally worthless human being.
Oh.
And Larry points out, you mean somebody's got to lie to him?
Yes.
That's a great line. But here again, Balky's being totally sweet. Larry's being totally not sweet.
Yeah, one
grumpy.
of them's being a little selfish, but the other one's being really empathic. Yeah.
So Balky's like, fine. If you don't want him to stay, you tell him.
Good move, Balky.
Yeah.
Make him pull the Band-Aid off.
Right. So Larry's like, okay. And he goes over to Twinkasetti, but Twinkasetti turns around and now he's holding all his clothes that Edwina had dumped on the floor in like a big pile in his arms. And he's crying and he's like shorter than them. He's looking up. He's looking super disheveled,
pathetic. He's turning it on. He's turning it on. All right.
And Larry tries to uninvite him. And Twinkasetti says, I understand. I'm dirt. Like, no one wants to blah, blah, blah. And Twinkasetti is turning very pathetic. He's like, I'm dirt. I don't deserve this, etc. It was too much for Larry. He gave in also. So he agrees to let him stay, and they all do a big hug. And Larry's like,
yeah, there's no way. Twinkasetti was doing very good with the guilt trip. That was not happening. So
I didn't see it as a guilt trip, really. I think he honestly was like,
he was
really pathetic in the scene, and he's like, look, he just heard the D word for the first time.
He did. Okay.
After 16 years of marriage in front of other people, he has nowhere to go. He's trying to think of like where to go with all my stuff.
Here's the thing with the Twink character is he's shown so much lying and distrust, like his wife sees it. So even you as the viewer, when he's being sincere, you're not really sure if he's playing them because he's Twinkasetti. You know?
Because that's the beauty of Ernie Sabella's
He's
acting.
amazing. Ernie Sabella is great in this role. So cuts to later at the apartment, and Balky and Larry look like they're preparing dinner as they're talking in the kitchen. Some great light physical comedy here. It appears they're making burgers because while they're talking, Balky is forming patties and lobbing them in the air over to cousin Larry, and Larry is storing them in the tray.
I just want to make a remark here. So they're at opposite sides of this little kitchen, but they're doing this scene live in front of a studio audience, Bronson Pinchot is throwing meat up in the air, and Larry's catching them, and those tosses and catches, there were like 3 or 4 of them, were so perfect. And I watched it and wondered, like, did they have to practice this? How much meat did they throw to get this perfect scene?
Beautiful parabolic arcs, you know?
Yes.
It's like a math equation. So what are they talking about? They're talking about having Twinkasetti as a house guest, and Larry is not happy. I love this line. He goes, it's like Tokyo inviting Godzilla for dinner. I just like the Godzilla.
True.
The Godzilla reference was fantastic. I was like,
it's like he's their bully. He bullies them, and now they've invited him.
He is makes their life miserable, and now he's there. Balky tosses another meat, and Larry catches it. He goes, "How are we going to get poor Mr. Twinkasetti and poor Mrs. Twinkasetti back together?" Balky says. Larry goes, "We are not." Balky, rule of thumb: never butt in. It's not up to us to save their marriage. I think he says marriage, then he goes marriage. Just stay out of it. So they're tossing burgers, and at this point, Larry notices the burgers are wildly different sizes. There's a big one, and there's a little tiny one, and they're not the same.
Yeah, I didn't know what that was about, but it was just a funny little moment.
Not paying attention to serving size.
Like, they never even talked about the burgers. It was just like a silent side thing that was just happening, which I appreciated.
Tossing meat in the air. Hilarious.
Twinkasetti comes bursting into the apartment with grocery bags and a boisterous, like, how's it going? And he brought beer. He's like, I got the beer. And Larry's like, come on in. Yeah.
He's like a hurricane when he comes in. The man is like a hurricane.
Right. So and he's like cheerful now. He's in a different mood. He's got a 6-pack of beer. Larry's like, come on in. Don't bother knocking, whatever. Twinkasetti takes off his coat and hat and tosses them on the table. Okay, hi. You are a guest, Twinkasetti.
There's a front closet, Twinkasetti. Larry has been inside it many times.
There's a closet. There's also coat hooks on the outside of the closet. But he's feeling very cheerful.
Yeah.
He's like, I got beer. Let's hang out. And Balky's like, you look like you found a reason to live. And Twinkasetti says, yeah, I thought about it. Women, who needs them? Especially since I got great guy pals like you. So now he's like, we're all pals.
He's like, I just need my dudes.
I don't need women.
I just need my guys.
So he pulls out one of the beers from the six-pack and he goes, how about a brewski? Balky's already holding a soda can in his hand, and Balky has this silly little wordplay line. He says, oh, no, thank you. I've got a Pepsi. And then he does that laughing at his own joke thing that he does.
And he's not holding a Pepsi. It's like a green can with dots.
It's
it looks like a 7-Up.
Generic. Yeah.
By the way, did you see the beer can? It was a white can. It said beer in blue letters. It's hilarious. That's good beer. I
love it.
So Twink goes to the couch to veg out. He turns the TV on, and Larry sees this as like evidence that Twink said he's going to be fine, and they just need to stay out and let his marriage problems run their course. Balky, though, disagrees, and he thinks Twink is hiding his pain deep down inside, to which Larry goes, the man is shallow. There is no deep down inside. Balky goes, no, he's got something inside him, and it's going to fester and swell and burst like a tick on a sheepdog. And there is, and then Larry goes, well, get him off our couch then. But there is the tick on the sheepdog reference. That's the second time.
We hear a lot of references about sheepdog, so much that I spoke about the Russian word for it last time, which of course is ovcharka.
Sheepdog.
Sheepdog.
Great imagery, though. I've seen ticks because we have dogs, and I've seen ticks that are about to burst, and that's exactly what Twinkie said he looks like right now.
Oh, gross. Also,
get him off our couch.
Balky walks over to Twinkasetti, who's on the couch, and he kneels down behind him, and he makes him turn the TV off. He like literally takes his hand and turns the TV off with the clicker. And his whole intention is to get Twinkasetti to like own up to his heartbreak.
Yeah.
To be vulnerable, to like lean into it. And he asks him if he wants to share the pain inside him. And Twinkasetti thinks for about a second and he replies, nah. And he turns the TV back on. And he says, what do you say we zip around the old cable dial until we hit some nudity? Ew, gross.
Yeah, that's what it's like. That's what you like watching TV with Twinkasetti. Just looking for boobs.
Blech. Larry, which is, blech is probably what Edwina said more than enough times.
Yeah.
Larry's been watching all of this from the kitchen, and he's like sarcastically, he's like, yeah, deep. So deep. So Balky shuts the TV off again, and he tells Twinkasetti that he says, I think that deep down, you know that if you don't have Mrs. Twinkasetti, you got nothing. And oh, sure, you'll make a life for yourself, but in the end, you'll be a wretched, filthy little man wandering the streets with newspapers under your shirt and plastic bags on your feet, wishing in your heart that you had not lost your true love forever. And what a speech. Yeah. What an image. And Twinkasetti, it got to him. Yeah. He's like, forever? And Balky's like, well, Balky, ever helpful, said, well, she did say the D word.
She said the D word.
And now Twinkasetti's crying.
Oh, no.
Bursts out in tears. He's like, the D word. He pulls out a handkerchief. He's sobbing. And then Balky just goes, cousin, this man is deep.
Cousin, this man is deep. That's a great line.
And then he brings Larry over to the couch, and they both kneel down beside Twinkasetti. And he's like, we've got to help his marriage. And this is a very funny physical comedy thing, too. He takes Larry's hand and uses Larry's hand to pet the top of Twinkasetti's head. And Larry's just looking at him like,
what are you doing?
What are you doing? And then he's like, Mr. Twinkasetti, we're here for you. And he goes, do you mean it? And Balky says, is the king cross-eyed? And Larry looks at him again like, what? Is the king cross-eyed? And then he takes Larry's hand and grabs a tissue and the handkerchief and puts it up to Twinkasetti's nose and goes, blow. And Larry's like, ew, gross, and pulls his hand away.
That's so funny. He's using him like a puppet. He got Twinkasetti germs on him. What is it? It's the king cross-eyed, and still, that kept me up at night. I was like, is this a reference? I think
this is just a little bit, another tidbit of knowledge about Mypos.
Really? I felt like it was some kind of reference about like, maybe British kings have always been cross-eyed, or there was a cross-eyed king, or their king is just a cross-eyed moron because it's Mypos. Maybe you're right.
I mean, I looked it up for like half a second and couldn't find anything notable.
I couldn't find anything
either. I think it's just another quirky little bit of information about Meatballs.
Okay.
They have a cross-eyed king.
They have a cross-eyed king. Of course they do.
So add that to the list of things we know about Meatballs.
So now Twinkacetti is willing to admit that he needs to get Edwina back. He goes, and even though it may take months, I can wait, much to the horror of Larry. He goes, months? He grabs his coat, his bags off the table. He goes, I'm going to go to my bed now and cry myself to sleep. And he heads directly into Larry's bedroom. Larry chases.
Wait, but he also takes the grocery bags. I don't know what was in those grocery bags, but he takes them.
He wasn't planning to share that with his new roommates.
Maybe not.
So Larry's chasing after him, but he's not fast enough. By the time he gets there, the door shuts. And he goes, Mr. Twinkacetti, as he knocks on the door. He goes, that's my room.
My room.
And then you just hear Twinkacetti go, and then Larry goes, there's tissues by the bed. And then he runs back to Balky, grabs him by the shoulders and goes, Balky, we have to save this marriage. And Balky goes, of course we do. Don't be ridiculous.
Of course I have. Don't be ridiculous.
Yeah, he is like frantic Larry again. Panicked Larry.
Panic Larry is the best Larry.
It's the best Larry. It's the Larry we all know and love.
Absolutely.
That takes us to Act 2. Act 2 opens with Larry and Balky standing by the phone stand, the little phone table that's by their front door, and they're like huddled over the receiver together because, of course, this is 1987. We didn't have speakerphone.
Well, they have two phones. Balky could have been on the other phone. They have two phones
in the house, but neither of them are speakerphone. It's like old school receivers. So Larry's on the phone holding the receiver. Balky's crouched in listening. Larry's talking to Mrs. Twinkacetti, to Edwina, and he's telling her he's not the same man. Well, okay, yes, he's still short, but
there's some great lines in this.
and Balky tells Larry, he goes, tell her he's changing. And Larry says, I can't do that. That would be lying. And Balky says, no, it's not. He's in the bedroom changing. And Larry thinks about this for half a moment. Right. And the next line is brilliant. He doesn't skip a beat. He's like, Mrs. Twinkacetti, believe me when I tell you he's changing.
He can say it with conviction. He's not lying.
I love it. I love it. Truth is so powerful.
It's so good. So Edwina, turns out she agrees to meet Twinkacetti for 5 minutes. There is hope in getting Twink out yet. Balky says Twinkacetti's best chance is to convince Mrs. Twinkacetti that he's trying to change. And Larry goes, no. He has no faith in Twinkacetti. He thinks Twinkacetti will never change. He thinks his best chance is just romance her for 5 minutes, get his foot back in so he can get out of their apartment. Just then, Twinkacetti walks out, and there's another great line by Ernie Sabella. Twinkacetti walks out and goes, Appleton, I read your diary. You're a sick man. I was like, oh, my God, Twinkacetti.
Oh, that sucks.
But Larry goes, Mr. Twinkacetti, that was personal. Twink goes, hey, we're roomies. We got no secrets. And then Balky looks hard and goes, you never let me read your diary.
Also, what was in Larry's diary that Twinkacetti thinks he's a sick man?
I can't believe he
I
just
really want to know.
Is Larry a secret serial killer? What's going on?
If you're listening to this and you're like a diehard Perfect Strangers fan, we should write Larry's diary.
We should. What is in Larry Appleton's
Larry
diary?
Appleton's diary fan fiction.
It's just how much he hates Elaine every day, and it's a little obsessive.
And maybe it's just like Larry hearts Jennifer over and over again.
And then just gets really disturbing and stalkery.
So Balky tells Twinkacetti that his wife has agreed to speak with him for 5 minutes. And he's like, you need to convince her that you've changed. And Larry disagrees. He says, no, just romance her for 5 minutes. That's easier. And, they just need to find that sweet middle spot. And Twinkacetti remembers, he's like, oh, I know, I'll take her to Tony's Mambo Room.
Tony's Mambo Room?
And Larry's like, Tony's Mambo Room? Our ribs stick to your ribs? That Tony's Mambo Room? I don't think that's going to work. Twinkacetti's like, no, what are you talking about? It's a very romantic place. You eat with your fingers.
You eat with your fingers.
To which Larry responds, that's not romantic. That's disgusting. Okay, hold on.
Okay.
This line actually made me cringe a little bit. As much as I love Larry and Balky, as much as I love the 1987 sort of innocence, it's disgusting line just made me cringe a little bit. It's very Eurocentric. Eating with your
What do you
hands
mean?
is not.
Yeah. No. Well,
Many cultures eat with their hands.
Yes,
It's
I
not
understand.
disgusting.
But it brought mind to me because they're talking about ribs.
They're talking about ribs. Okay.
Eating with your ribs, you get it all over, like hot wings, and you get all the sauce all over you, and it's just a big mess. And you got to wear a
Fair
pamper.
enough, but
Talk about ribs.
I mean, the
Talk
way it
about
was
ribs.
written, it was like you eat with your fingers. That's disgusting.
You eat with your mouth. Everybody knows that. Nobody eats with their fingers.
Right. So Balky agrees with Larry on this one. He was like, okay, Twinkassetti's romance needs a little bit of work.
Oh, yeah.
Twinkassetti's like, I don't have a romantic bone in my body. And Balky says, you must. You got her to fall in love with you in the first place. And Twinkassetti says, sure, that was 13 years ago. But of course, we know it was 16 years ago.
As Larry and Balky both say and interrupt him. He goes, see, I'm hopeless. And he goes back and sits down.
He
and now
is hopeless.
we get the best physical, the peak of physical comedy for this episode here, as Balky and Larry are going to reenact what Twinkassetti should do in Tony's Mambo Room. They're going to show him how to be romantic. Larry grabs a scarf nearby and wraps it around him like a shawl and takes his mark by the door, standing like a lady. And Balky's sitting in a chair by the fireplace. And now they're role-playing their first meeting at Tony's Mama Room after not seeing each other for a long time. Larry walks across the room like Edwina, and then eyes Balky as Balky looks back. And Larry acts coy and shy. Balky stands up, reaches out his hand to Larry, and he goes, Edwina, you look lovely this evening. Larry takes Balky's hand, steps closer. That dress brings out your eyes, Balky says. Then Twink starts to get up. He goes, I'm going to throw up. At which point, I love this. Balky goes, sit down, turnip.
I love it.
That's the second time he gets to call him turnip. And
So Balky is now in a position of power over
Yes.
Twinkassetti because
taking
Twinkassetti is
command.
now vulnerable. He's crying. He's on their couch in their home. So this is a nice shift.
And so Twinkie said he does it. And the whole time Larry is doing like Edwina's voice. He continues. He goes, Donald, the Mambo Room."
No. It's like a comical, high pitched
Yeah,
woman's voice.
oh.
It's like how a little kid a little boy would play a woman, like a girl voice.
Dude, how are they
She
doing?
was like, hello. Yeah, it's very high pitched. He's just like, Donald, the Mambo Room.
I can't even do it that high. That's why. How sweet of you to remember.
How sweet of you to remember.
Balky goes, how could I forget my pet? And then they're starting to step in unison and turn. And Larry turns his back to Balky and they take 2 steps forward in unison at the same time. And
Like a little delicate dance.
yeah, like a little dainty 2-step. And then Balky goes, it seems like only yesterday. You're as beautiful as you were then. Pulling Larry to one side. And then he goes, no. And he pulls Larry to the other side. He goes, I'm wrong. You're even more beautiful. Larry goes,
I am.
You are.
I am.
You are.
I am.
You are. Well, of course you are. Don't be ridiculous. And I love that. I
then
love that
Larry-
exchange. Like, I am. You are.
And then Larry says, Donald, I forgot how romantic you could be. How could I ever have kicked you out? And then he looks at him and he goes, Larry looks at Balky in the eyes and he goes, take me.
Take me. And then Balky is hilarious. He looks at him just goes, I don't think so. And I know you mentioned that blooper reel, that other episode.
Yeah.
I watched it. This is like in the beginning of that blooper
This
reel.
features commonly in
You
the
know,
blooper
this
reel.
took multiple takes to not crack up while they're doing the
Oh
Donald
my God, it's
and
so
Edwina
funny.
role play is hilarious.
Yes. So they break out of their characters to ask Twinkassetti. They're like, do you get the idea? He is not getting the idea.
No, he's not.
And he's like given up. He's like, let's face it, we'll be roomies for life. And Larry's like, nope, that's not going to happen. He says, all right, let's not panic. And of
As
course, when Larry says, let's not panic, he's doing
panicking.
what? He's panicking.
As he's panicking, as he yells that.
And Larry's like, look, we can do this. We put a man on the moon. We will go to the restaurant. We will get you through this thing. And Twinkassetti's like, okay, cool. And Larry's like, we just want to see you and her back together again in your own home.
Emphasize in your own home. And then Balky goes, did we really put a man on the moon? Larry goes, yes, we did. And get off my dress as he pulls the blanket scarf out
I
from.
feel like this
Balky.
part might have been a little bit improvised because it just felt like,
There was no joke there.
yeah,
Like,
there was no joke there. And he was like, get off my dress.
I felt like there should have been a punchline to did we really put a man on the moon? And there really wasn't. It
And
was-
Balky was just like kneeling on his scarf dress or whatever.
But when he says when he put a man on the moon, if you notice Balky's face, he suddenly starts thinking about that. He's like,
Ah.
what? So it was
Maybe
there.
that part was there, and
Hey,
then they flubbed
They
it. Or
can't all be great jokes.
yeah. So then we have a scene change, and we see the exterior of Tony's Mambo room at night, and we're gonna get back and tell you
I
more
did some
about
digging.
Tony's Mambo room
yep.
after we're done with the recap.
Yep.
But then we cut to the inside of the restaurant, which may or may not be that same indoor set
definitely
that
is.
we've seen in the gym and the bar and the casino before.
And so this
But-
restaurant, what would you say? It's like a teal, light blue color
yes,
palette
it's gaudy. It's the kind of gaudy that was fancy in
with
the 80s.
big like leather benches, or what are those? They
Yeah,
slide
remember
into
how the
booths,
inside of the
round
casino
booths.
was also gaudy
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the hotel room was
Yeah,
gaudy? It's like
similar
that. Like,
gaudy.
it's what was fancy in 1987.
Well, it's supposed to be Tony's Mambo room, so
And there's
high class.
booths. Yeah, it's set
Yes,
up.
booths.
It's like a teal theme. There's
Yeah.
booths. There's like fake plants all around.
Yeah.
Larry and Balky and Twinkasetti are all at a booth inside the restaurant, and they're still arguing about what strategy to use that he should use to win back his wife. And Larry keeps saying, "No, you got to tell her how beautiful she is. Talk about her eyes."
Talk about her eyes.
And Balky's like, "No, you need to beg her forgiveness. You should throw yourself down at her feet. You should press your face up against her arches and tell her she can step on your neck because you have not been the man you should have been." This is how you apparently win a woman back on Meepos.
And I love it because then there's a beat, and then Twinkie said he turns to Larry and goes, "What about her eyes?" Because he's not doing all this. You know what's funny about this is that this intense apology, giving yourself over. It is something that is in a lot of Eastern cultures, like Pakistani culture. There's that thing where you should, bow down or throw yourself at
Yeah.
your feet, and it reminded me of that kind of Eastern European, Asian, maybe Asian thing of forgiveness, where this is the thing they do. Even in Japan too, they probably do
Well, I
something
mean,
like
it's
this.
just begging and groveling.
Yeah.
All begging and
But
groveling
it's so
has you like
extreme
low.
for Western people to
Yeah.
think that that's. But Balky just goes, "You need to go to the most desperate thing."
Yeah, you need to win her forgiveness back. But Larry's like, "No, it's her eyes. Tell her that her eyes remind you of moonlit pools on a summer night. She'll melt like butter." First of all, what does Larry know about wooing women
Yeah,
with
he
lines
can't
about
even
their
get
eyes?
Jennifer, and that's a hack line, Apple. Hack line.
So then Edwina shows up. So, okay, wait. Edwina shows up. They're like, she's here. And Balky and Larry go to the next booth over, and we have a little bit of physical
Yeah,
comedy here.
they shuffle
They go
over.
to the far side of the booth. They they both get in on one side of the booth, and then they do this like synchronized shuffling toward the center of the booth. And then they hold up menus in front of their face in that very comic way, like you can't see me.
Yeah.
So they're just one booth over. Edwina walks in, and she is in, I gotta say, for
What's she wearing?
1987, this amazing
Fabulous.
sparkly top.
It
okay,
is.
It has shoulder pads, of
Yeah,
course, but it's
yeah.
like multicolored, blingy, sparkly top. I loved this top. I would wear this top today.
Oh wow, really? Oh my god.
Yeah. Oh, it is. I mean, I'm no fashionista, but I loved.
Edwina
this top that she's wearing.
Twinkasetti Fashions coming back in style.
She dressed
How about
up.
that?
She
Yeah,
dressed up.
see
I
what
don't
she
know. She wanted to rub her awesomeness in his face.
did. Yeah,
I don't know.
that she's doing well. Yeah.
Yeah. So she sits down opposite Twinkasetti in his booth, and he's like stammering, bumbling, trying to talk about her eyes. And she's like rolling her eyes. She's like, "Oh God, what is this?" And she's like, "You have 5 minutes." And she wants him to hold the bowl. Like, she's like, "You have 5 minutes. I don't want to hear about my eyes." And she says, "Tell me one good reason why I should take you back." And he's sweating. He's like, he's looking at his watch. 5 minutes, a reason. But then he blurts out that he's trying to change, and isn't it obvious by the choice of restaurant?
Oh.
And she's like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, because the Mambo Room is kind of our place." And she's like, "But why? We've never been here before."
Uh-oh.
And then he, for a moment, thinks he has a bit of redemption in something that she forgot.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, sure, we have sweetness." And he's pouring them champagne. He's like, "Years ago, you don't remember." Well, I may not remember wedding anniversaries, but I remember the romantic stuff. We sat right in that booth over there, and we necked all night.
Necked, that word.
Necked. No one says that anymore. And he's like, I even slipped the accordion player 50 cents to play That's Why the Lady is a Tramp. And he does this little like swaggery.
Why does he think that's a good choice of song to play? I don't know.
He does this like swaggery swag of his neck, like he's feeling all proud of himself. Doesn't last long, though, that pride, because Edwina's like, well, maybe it's because the lady was a tramp. I've never been to this restaurant in my life. Awkward.
No. That's the last thing you want to happen.
Whoops. I mean, you're a married man. Have you ever done anything like that?
Well... Maybe I may have confused a memory.
Oh,
but look, it happened. So we find out what happens. Tweak at that moment realizes he's screwed up. He's pouring champagne nervously. He takes a big sip, and then he looks around. And he goes, come to think of it, neither have I. And he goes, excuse me, nature calls. The oldest trick in the book to get out. He gets off of the table, runs behind to the back of the booth to Larry and Balky's booth, and he is panicking. He's screwed up big. He goes, I got the right restaurant, but the wrong woman. Mr. Twinkacetti explains, and he said this line like Christopher Walken. He goes, I used to bring dates here before we were married. I was like, that's Christopher Walken delivery. And so this restaurant was somewhere he used to come before they were married. And at this point, Edwina has heard them, and she stood up and turned around. And
she turned around. They're only one booth over. She sees them, which I very much appreciated that she heard them and noticed them, because if you were around in the 80s and watched a lot of TV shows and even the 90s and beyond, you know that the time-space thing, or the space thing, is like totally skewed. Like in sitcom world, sound doesn't travel. So when people want to have private conversations, they just take 2 steps over to the side.
Yeah, nobody else can hear them.
The other person doesn't hear them. But
what's funny is on drama shows, it's the reverse. There are scenes where there's 2 characters and they're far apart and they're delivering these quiet, hushed, very serious lines. And I'm like, how are you hearing each other? He's way over there. How can you hear him? What's going on?
On sitcoms, you're all very, very close. You take 2 steps away and it's like they're not supposed to hear you. Yeah. But anyway, she does hear them. Twinkacetti tries to recover. He's like, oh, just now I was in the John and I was thinking about how your eyes remind me of moonlit pools on a warm summer night. And she's like, stuff it, Donald.
He's still lying to her, by the way.
He's still trying to lie to her. He's panicked. It's like nervous, like instinct lying.
Oh, it gets worse, though. He starts digging his hole.
How could you bring me to a place where you cheated on me?
No.
And he says, I never cheated on you while we were married. I cheated on you while we were engaged.
He goes, can we talk real quick? Trying to cover it up.
And she's like, you talk to my lawyer. And she's out. And he is distraught. He's like, that's it. The guys are like, well, we're sorry it didn't work out. And he says, thanks a lot, guys. And then he's like, I'm going for a walk. And then he walks away. But before he leaves, he says, you don't have to wait up for me. I made a key.
Oh,
and Larry's like, But I want to make one more note about this restaurant scene. Only in sitcoms do we ever see booths that have a back in the middle of a room where you can stand behind
there was
them.
like 2 rows. There's another set of chairs.
But in real life, you never see a booth like freestanding in the middle of a room.
Should be against the wall.
Against a wall.
Hey, it worked. It worked for the blocking and the storytelling.
Yeah, but I wonder about things like in the writer's room where they're like, how are we going to do this? Oh, let's just put a booth in the middle of the room. That'll be normal. People will understand that. And they do. But like, how do you even think of that? Act
3 opens and it's morning again, and the cousins are opening Ritz discount again. But Balky comments that he's worried about Twinkacetti because he didn't come home last night. Oh boy. Larry was just happy that he got to sleep in his own bed. But Balky goes, he's our friend, cousin. Larry goes, our friend? Balky, the man tried to have you deported for giving the correct change to a blind man.
Aww.
And Larry goes, well, I never said he was a saint. So Larry goes, Balky, you are the nicest person I ever met, and I hope I never get to be like you. And then Balky, trying to make him feel better, goes, cousin, don't worry. You won't. And then Larry has a confused look. Was this an insult compliment? What's going on? This is great.
I think it was an unintended insult compliment.
He's trying to.
I think Balky was just like, oh, don't worry, like trying to soothe him or like assuage him.
But he just said, you'll never be a nice person. Is that what he meant?
That was funny. And Larry's, the confused look on his face is just really, really funny. So then they hear a noise from the office again, kind of like they did at the beginning of the show. And they see another shadow behind the door, but they know who it is this time. It's Twink Cassetti. He comes out of the office and he looks disheveled, and he's also tucking his shirt back into his pants and buttoning up his shirt. And he's like, "What are you bozos doing here so early?" And Balki is ecstatic. He's like, "Oh my God, you're all right." And he walks toward him with open arms, about to give him a hug. But just then, someone else comes out of the office, and it's Mrs. Twink Cassetti.
Ooh.
And she is wearing a big old raincoat, and it's tied around her waist. She's wearing a raincoat. She sees the guys. She looks a little embarrassed. Everything's a little bit awkward. They're all standing there. She's like, "Hi, boys." And they're all standing there in awkward silence. And then Balki finally goes, "Are you naked under that coat?"
I love that, because that is it's like a
So
child. It's like a child
yeah.
would actually just blurt that out. And then you get Twinkie giving him another awesome bark. He's like, "Rawr!" Right at him. And Larry goes, "You're together?" And Twink goes, "Yeah. After I left the restaurant, I got to thinking about what you said about, being romantic and all." And then he remembered what he did when he was trying to get Edwina to fall in love with him in the first place.
And what was that?
Edwina explains, "This crazy guy showed up under my window with a big bag of egg rolls and a saxophone." And then Balki goes, "Egg rolls and saxophone. Why didn't we think of that?" Of course. And then she continues, "Then we came back here. She explains that when they were teenagers, they used to steal precious moments in the back of her father's store. So Twink thought this would be a perfect place to, quote unquote, settle their differences." And Balki has a great line. He goes, "You big bag of romance." He tells Mr. Twink Cassetti. And then Twink Cassetti goes, "Why don't you boys take the day off?" And both of them turn and look past them like he's talking to someone else. So you talking to us? And Larry goes, "Are you kidding? Who's run the store?" And Twink's like, "Well, maybe today the store doesn't have to open." And he looks over at Edwina, and now Edwina goes, "Woof."
Oh, boy, they're a barking couple.
And then he goes, "Edwina," and he does a lovely spin off.
He does a reverse spin
very
back
graceful.
into the
Very graceful.
on his toes.
For Twink Cassetti, I was surprised at his gracefulness.
Back into the office, and he gestures with a finger for her to join him. And then it's lesson time.
It's
and actually, there's
time.
2 lesson times. Lesson time 1 is with the usual sentimental music that we hear at other lesson times. And it is Edwina saying to the boys. So Twink said he's already gone back into the office, and she says she thanks them for all that they did. And she says, "I know there's a side to Donald that you never see, and I hadn't seen it in a long time either. But last night made me realize that the man I fell in love with is still there. And after 16 years of marriage, I'm not going to give up on him."
Oh, the whole crowd, the audience goes, "Oh."
So then Twink said we just see his hand reach out from the office with like a come hither gesture. And she joins him, and the office door closes behind them. Now we have lesson time 2. And this time, the music is that same vaudevillian-esque music that we hear, that we heard in the baseball scene
bouncy,
when the tent
music
was moving across the shop. Not the sentimental music.
The more cartoony music. Yeah.
And this is now lesson time 2 is the lesson between the cousins, right?
Yep.
Balki tells to Larry, he's like, "All right, you said it. It don't help when you butt in." Yeah. And Larry's like, okay, you're right. He says, "I was wrong. You were right. I guess sometimes the only way to help is to butt in." And then they're putting on their jackets and they're about to leave. And then they hear very loudly a sound of a saxophone being played very badly. It sounds like a whale dying.
Or like a cat dying,
or
or something.
Or whatever,
Yeah, it's squeaky and high pitched.
It's just like awful. And Larry goes, "Do you hear that? That's the sound of love." And then Balki's like, "Imagine what hate sounds like." Such a great line.
Fantastic. Wait, we're not done. We got a big pun coming up, everyone. To close it up big.
Pun.
Oh, this is a big pun. Probably the biggest pun in the show so far.
All right. So it's Larry says, "Well, you know what they say. Even bad sax is better than no sax at all."
There you go. And the audience does applaud. I don't know why.
The audience applauds
Because it's a big pun.
It's
Big
a
pun.
sax pun. Larry's quite proud. He laughs at his own pun. Balky's just looking at him confused, and then
He's
Larry
got a blank
shakes
look
his
on
head.
his face. Nothing.
Larry's like, okay, he's not going to get it. And they leave and roll credits. That was a pretty, like you said before, there's a lot of innuendo in this show.
Yeah.
And we're going to stick to that because we are also a family-friendly show. So we had the sax pun at the end. Also, if you noticed just a few scenes ago, when they were telling the guys about when they were teenagers, they said they used to steal precious moments in the back of her father's store. So there's precious moments. So they did this very delicately. Like, it's all there. It's more adult material, but they did it very delicately, and I appreciate it.
But then the sax pun comes so close to, like, if you're
close.
Look, if you're okay, imagine you're in 1987, you're watching this with your family, and you have some young kids, and this pun, everyone's applauding.
That was very edgy.
It's very edgy for the prime time. I had to give it to them. Also interesting to note that this episode focused so much on Donald, Twinkassetti, and Edwina. Do you think they were thinking about maybe spinning them off? Because we know they spun off stuff later. I wonder if they were thinking at this early stage, maybe we can have a Twinkassetti show.
Oh, that would be fun.
Ernie Sabella definitely deserved his own TV show. I wonder if he was ever a lead in a show. I'll have to look that up. But he is so funny.
So funny. Is he still around?
Let's find out. Ernie Sabella, 71 years old currently.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Has he been acting?
He has the last thing he did. Oh, yes. Remember we mentioned this. In 2019 and in the late 20-teens, he is the voice of Pumbaa in the Lion King animated cartoons like Timon and Pumbaa at the movies, the Lion Guard TV series. You could totally hear that.
Yeah.
He's totally the voice of Pumbaa.
Okay, now let's talk about Tony's Mambo Room.
Yes, I was very interested. You know why? Because do you notice the error right away when it cuts to Tony's Mambo Room?
Yes,
it's pretty obvious.
Two
What's the
restaurant
error? Yes, there's two names. They superimpose Tony Mambo Room on the side on the left, but over on the right, you can clearly see the words Chez Paul on a sign.
So what this image is an image of an actual building in Chicago. It was a restaurant called Chez Paul, which is why the sign is there. And this restaurant was established in 1945 by Paul Contos. It was the oldest French restaurant in Chicago.
Very popular, high-end French restaurant for many, many years.
And it wasn't always in this building that we see. It moved in. This building was a mansion. It's called the Robert Hall McCormick II Mansion. It's at 660 Northwest Street. The Chez Paul restaurant moved to this mansion in 1964. And it's been in quite a few movies. This restaurant the interior of the restaurant, the actual interior, not what we saw in this episode. The actual interior of Chez Paul was in a scene in the 1980 film, The Blues Brothers.
Well, the replica, they used replicas, but it was the...
Oh, right.
Yeah,
a replica
based on the
of
interior.
Chez Paul, though.
Yeah.
A similar set of the replica of the interior of Chez Paul was also used in the 1986 movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Yep.
And unfortunately, Chez Paul closed in 1995. The building is still there, the mansion and its office.
So I went to Google Maps Street View. I took the screenshot from the show, and you can see, I'll put this in our show description to match. That building is still there. It's a different color. It's still on Rush Street, but the building is kind of famous.
A beautiful building.
Yeah, it's a
and
very
it has
old
this
school
charm.
building. So the building still exists. But the restaurant is Chez Paul. So I just thought that was neat. I was like, what? Why does it say Chez Paul? What is this? I got to find out. And I did.
You'd think like even in 87, they would have some kind of editing technology.
They couldn't you covered the one sign. You couldn't cover the other side. Did somebody not see this?
I don't know. Yeah.
Where's the continuity
Maybe they
editor?
wanted to give an homage to Chez Paul.
Maybe. It was, at the time, it was probably in its height. It kind of like went down in reputation before it closed. But yeah.
But the food was great.
Yeah,
there.
very famous, fancy French restaurant. Let's get to the Dimitri appearances. We always like to spot where Dimitri is. Did you find him? Dimitri is on the left side of the kitchen wearing an apron or a bib or something.
Oh, yeah, because they were cooking. They were making burgers.
And he has like food in front of him to eat, or maybe Dimitri's cooking. I don't know. And then later you could see him on the other little partition shelf thing, laying on his side with a black mask over his eyes, trying to go to sleep.
Mask.
Yes, because he's a roommate also. So they do have a roommate.
We have a lot of fun Balky-isms in this episode. We have I got a Pepski.
I got a
Is
Pepski.
the king cross-eyed? Of course, we learn about the Myposian king. And then I loved it when he said, "You big bag of romance."
It's so satisfying. Don't be ridiculous. Said 2 times. Good. That's about average.
And then other running jokes include we have Twinkassetti growling and barking. That's a common thing.
Yeah.
We have Larry grabbing Balky by the shirt. That's like all the time, always.
Every episode
and
he's grabbing him.
Balky laughing at his own joke.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, I don't think so, which is always funny.
And now it's time for the segment of this show that we call Perfect Strangers Today, in which we talk about if this story were happening now, how would things be different? Did you have any thoughts about that?
I thought of something and I just forgot what it was. This one was a hard one because really Heartbreak is a timeless
It's universal
story.
yeah.
You're still, and like, even in the beginning, he's grabbing a bat. You're still, like, all those things still would kind of work.
You would still do that. I mean,
today.
probably today you'd have some kind of security system in the shop. I had a couple thoughts. I fixed on the luggage,
Yes, her little
the suitcase that Edwina brings.
Suitcase.
It's like, it looks like a quality suitcase,
Yeah.
but quite old fashioned.
Yeah.
I think I actually have had this thought about luggage quite a bit in my real life. You don't see that kind of old luggage anymore. Those old suitcases at all, ever. Like, they're just completely gone. All luggage now are like rolling suitcases on wheels with extended handles. But I remember even in my lifetime traveling when I first started traveling, like lugging those old timey suitcases that were squares that you carried with a handle.
I think if you did that now, people would laugh and be like, look at that sucker carrying his luggage,
I know.
fighting gravity. What are you doing?
The other thought I had was about the scene with Edwina in the raincoat.
Yes.
Coming out of the office.
Yeah.
Now, after they had stolen precious moments, as they say.
I mean, that's kind of racy too. Like, she's wearing nothing but a raincoat.
So that is racy, but not. I mean, if that scene were shot in a sitcom today, and it has been in many sitcoms, but in I think almost all modern sitcoms, even the ones in prime time that are meant to be family friendly, it's a lot racier. The woman is usually in a t-shirt that comes up to just like the top of her thighs.
Okay.
And you see a lot more there. But
I see
in this show, Edwina is like really draped. It's really very modest for a racy sentiment.
I may have a counter argument. I see where you're going. The one thing is, this is an older couple. You know, I think they're trying to be respectful of, they're not, right? So, and they're showing like an older couple, have a relationship. So they're being a little more modest. And also, let's not forget, we just saw Jennifer in Nothing But a Towel.
Oh, that's right. I did forget that.
Very
that's
short
right.
towel.
Okay, I take it back. That's a fair point about them being an older couple. My first thought was like, oh my God, that's so, like, it's funny that they're doing a racy scene and everyone understands that it's racy, but it's really like it's a huge, big, bulky raincoat that's covering everything. It's very modest.
Yeah. And then, the other thought I had, I'm actually surprised they didn't do, like, they could have easily gone and done the cliched Cyrano de Bergerac, Roxanne storyline. And, for a moment,
they feed him the lines.
Yes, for a moment, I thought they were going to actually do that, where they tell him what to say. But to their credit, they went a completely different way. And they were kind of there, but they were just like, you could see them right behind Edwina watching their faces just out of focus.
If I remember correctly, many a show in the 80s and 90s, and perhaps still do that Cyrano.
Still,
gimmick.
Absolutely. It is a classic, timeless. You had Steve Martin and Roxanne make it famous again in the 80s, and that movie was hilarious. But yeah, that's going to be a thing where that's always going to come up. They're going to pull the Cyrano de Bergerac. Good stuff. Well, that's it for this week, everybody. Next week, Sophia, disaster dinner party.
Uh-oh.
Wait. Couple of dates with Jennifer and Marianne not going the way the cousins wanted
more
to.
failed romance? Could it be? We'll find out.
They're supposed to be together.
Thank you so much for listening. week after week. We love to hear from you. If you like the show, please visit our website, danceofjoypod.com. Everything is there. It'll tell you where to find the show on all the different podcast apps, where you can subscribe, where you can like us and leave us a review. You can also talk to us directly.
What?
There's a little button on the bottom right of our site. You can press that and leave us a voice message. We love to hear your voices. If you don't love to hear your voice, you can also write us an email at danceofjoypod@gmail.com. And most of all, if you're enjoying this, please share this show with a friend. We want everyone to listen to us. We want everyone to watch Perfect Strangers and have a bit of joy in their lives.
TGIF, everybody. And now we are so happy.
Now we are so happy we do the dance of joy. Hey, 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 hey.